Greetings, Sentinels fans! I believe it's about time we got on track with the promo variants. We have done Oblivion, Void Guard, Vengeance, Wrath of the Timelines, and Infernal City. So that means we are doing the core game, right? Wrong! We have some miscellaneous heroes that were sold individually. So, let's take a look at the stragglers today. Let us start off with Stuntman, because, let's face it, he would want to be either the headliner or the finale. Le Pretty Boy has two versions. His original version allows him to deal a point of irreducible damage. By itself, it's a little lame, but if you use this power outside his turn, then he deals 3 damage instead. This sets the tone for his deck, as he is given plenty of opportunity to use his powers outside of his turn. He likes to steal the spotlight, and he gets extra benefits from doing things outside his turn. The base power is fairly simple, all things considered, but using it out of turn can be quite fun. His other variant is his action hero version, an Ansel from another universe where he wasn't such a wuss when it comes to his facial scarring. I mean seriously, look at that awesome scar there. He comes complete with a bunch of homages to 80s action movies. So what can this Stuntman do? Well, it's a bit of a doozy. When you use this power, it increases all his damage by 1 until the start of his next turn, and then he plays a card. Those of you who have seen my ban list, you may remember that this version of Stuntman featured on that. He can have such powerful turns that he can clear the field and kill the baddie by himself. He can spend a few turns stealing power uses and building up those boosts before dropping a mine and blowing the bad guys to Kingdom Come. He can get turns where he has +3 or +4 to his attacks, especially if you are funneling powers to him with other heroes, and he will simply steal the show. My issues here being that, first, he's hogging the spotlight, interrupting everyone's turn to perform another big action. He easily becomes way overpowered, and thus makes the rest of the team a bit superfluous. Second, he suffers from a card draw problem, where the power will empty out his hand really fast. Now he has bonus card draw, so it isn't as much of an issue as it is with Expatriate, but it is notable. Of the two variants, Action Hero is clearly the more powerful, but I personally like the original more. Next we have Benchmark, Reaver mascot and unwitting thug. He has his base variant and his supply and demand promo. Base Benchmark has a power that deals 1 damage and then lets him draw a card. Pretty pedestrian. It eliminates the need to double skip as it accelerates his card draw regardless, getting him the cards that he needs since he is very setup dependent. Otherwise, his power is not really all that interesting. Supply and Demand Benchmark, otherwise known as Sadmark because I'm hilarious, is a bit more powerful. This one's power heals him for 1 point and places the top card of his deck into play. On top of the healing, which can be boosted by one of his hardwares, this further increases his setup speed by dropping essentially a random card in play, bypassing the need to draw and play said card. If you treat putting the top card in play as both a draw and a play, that is technically 2 actions for the price of 1. And of course, this doesn't negate any of the acceleration benefits from his other cards. Sadmark can set up really well. Now, this may end up with you accidentally getting more software than you can maintain, but he has ways of getting them back, and it also gives you extra card draw, so that's not really much of a problem either. Now, with his setup speed, Sadmark is the more powerful Benchmark, but as it is, Benchmark is already pretty overpowered, so I will place his original as my favorite. Next up, we have Unity, everyone's favorite robot master of the multiverse. Well, unless you are a Baron Blade person. Unity has 3 versions for us to look through: Base, Freedom 6, and Termination. Unity is all about constructing her golems to fight for her. Base Unity does this through destroying her own or her friends' equipment cards. This puts her in a similar position as Dark Watch Mr. Fixer, where players tend not to like her very much because she damages other people's setup. Now she does have enough equipment to support her own construction, but this can still be a problem for some players. There are many ongoing cards that are just fluff or just kinda nice to have, but there are much fewer equipments where that can be said for them. Not always, there are some equipments that are quite disposable, but that is fairly uncommon. Freedom 6 Unity, frequently known as Golem Unity, is a version of her that is from the Iron Legacy timeline. She's not actually Devra, but a flesh child made by Biomancer because she was dying and Mr. Fixer forced the flesh changer to try and save her by putting her consciousness into one of her golems. Comics are weird, even made up ones. This version of Unity can deal herself 4 energy damage in order to play a golem. Now on the one hand, this makes golem summoning much more reliable, no longer needing setup in order to do so. On the other hand, 4 damage is kinda steep. You'll note that she can only do this a total of 6 times before she knocks herself out, even if the villains aren't going after her, making me only want to use this power at the beginning and in emergencies. On Terminus's ghostly third hand, however, the damage doesn't actually need to connect in order to summon a golem, meaning that if you can reduce the damage, make her immune to the damage, or redirect the damage, say with the stealth bot, it will still work. So there are things you can do with this. Frankly though, it is Termination Unity that is the most fun to play, however. This version of Unity changed her style to better combat the ferrokinetic choke point. As such, she is a bit more flippant with her use of the golems. This one has a power where she first destroys a golem in play and shuffles it into her deck. Then, she summons a golem directly from her trash into play, and then after that, she draws an extra card. Now this might seem like just an okay power, trading one golem for another, and it certainly has a bit of a drawback where you can't even reclaim golems you destroy with it, as they go back into the deck. You also reduce your options for playing out of your hand, needing to rely on the pylon or the work desk for that. This one does guarantee, though, that you will have access to bots as long as you have some in the trash, and the bad guys are breaking them instead of you. I dare you to play Iron Legacy with Termination Unity and keep spamming B-bots at him. The sped up card draw is also valuable for Unity to get the bots and equipment that she needs in order to get her standard setup going and provide fodder for the work desk. Termination Unity is great for constant use of bots, even if they keep getting blown up, though she has a slow start and she needs alternate means to get bots in play. Golem Unity has a good start, as she can get going as long as she has a bot, but she can't sustain that power for too long. Basic Unity has decent bot production speed as long as she or another player is willing to sacrifice equipment for it. All in all though, I think Termination is the version that best works for her. From tech to magic. Let's talk about the Scholar. He is the premier tank of the game, sporting great healing and damage reduction. He has 2 versions, but if I'm perfectly honest, I'm not a huge fan of either of them. Base version has him heal a single point of damage, which can combo off of Mortal Form to Energy as well as Solid to Liquid. A bit of constant healing is nice, but he has a lot of healing cards that are just better for most purposes. I'd much rather use Truthseeker for my power, since he will be needing the card draw in order to maintain his forms. Scholar the Infinite's power has him deal himself and another target an amount of infernal damage equal to the amount of cards he discarded that turn, plus 1. Now, for the most part, this ends up being powered by the elemental forms. The more forms you have, the more constant damage. Issue here is that if you have more than one form out, they become very difficult to maintain. You would need to use Truthseeker or bring what you need in order to keep them in play, and those end up being turns where you aren't using this power. So this ends up being a power that you either use at the start of the game when you do not have the forms out, in which case it does pretty pitiful damage, or use it at the end of the game after you spend most of the game gathering cards, in which case he might already be quite hurt and you haven't really been doing much through the game. Thankfully, Flesh to Steel mitigates the damage dealt to Scholar by the power. There is one more fun combo though. If you play Know When to Turn Loose to discard your entire hand to deal a ton of damage, that also fuels the power, making the power deal a whole lot of damage as well, effectively doubling the effectiveness of Know When to Turn Loose, as long as you can handle the self-damage. It makes for a very fun finisher. But again, for regular play, most of the time I'd rather use Truthseeker. But for the purposes of this video, Scholar the Infinite is, I guess, the more fun version. And finally, you know him, you've been waiting for him. It is time for Guise. Guise has 3 versions: Base, Santa Guise, and Completionist Guise. Base Guise is relatively simple. His player can choose to either play a card or draw a card before Guise deals 1 damage to a bad guy. This power helps him set up either for getting cards he needs in hand, or to easily get them into play. Having a second card play is useful for pulling off all the shenanigans he can pull. His Santa Guise version is a lot of fun too. He is special in that he has 2 powers. The first power allows him to place the top card of each hero deck face down in play, without showing them to the players. You can set this up as many times as you like before you use the other power to get the payoff. The second power has one player flip over all the face down cards in their play area, and each of those cards act as if just entering play. This can lead to a few turns of not much, followed by several turns of one hero swarming the bad guys, either with setup or lots of one-shots. Now normally I'd take away points because this set of powers has no real interaction with his deck, with the exception being that he can use I Can Do That Too in order to use both powers in a single turn. But this power is so off the wall, I don't really mind. It does take over whatever normal guy's stuff you may do. Yeah, you can use this to set guys up with his copycat cards, but you don't have the kind of control you would need to make the plans. So Guy's shenanigans will be just as much a surprise to you as they might be to the bad guys. Finally, we have Completionist Guys. This one gets extra meta. This guy is cool, but does require you to have quite the collection of promo variants already. When you activate this guy's power, you switch out the character card of one hero with a promo variant of the same hero. After doing that, guys may deal 2 damage, or use the power that he just swapped out. As you can probably imagine, this can get kind of nutso. Being able to swap out which innate powers the character can use can seriously change the game. Starting with Golem Unity for a strong start before switching to base, have Requital Cosmic place a bunch of constructs before Extreme Cosmic begins machine gun fire at the bad guys, or swap Harvey from Dark Watch to base after a setup wipe so she can continue doing damage. This variant turns Guys into one of the most strategic characters, as you can balance short-term moves with long-term prep, on top of his other existing shenanigans. Heck, if you get bored playing this way, you can use the power to swap out Guys' character card and play as either base or Santa for the rest of the game. So in terms of best variant, it is without a doubt Completionist, since you can swap to the others if you want, on top of radically changing the game with your variant collection. However, for my favorite, the need to have a large collection of variants does hold it back a bit. Granted, not much, since you can print and play the variants in the physical game, and in the digital game he is meant to be the last variant to be unlocked. And the complexity of thought to go through when messing with your friend's innate powers can make him a bit much. And of course, with reduced card play, he has reduced shenaniganery. I find Santa Guys to be simpler and more enjoyable overall, but I do recognize that Santa Guy's power doesn't really work with his deck, and is more adjacent to it. Okay, we have reached the end of the promo variants for the expansions. But I guess that means that next time we do this, we will be doing the core game. And I hope to see you there. Take care, friends.